And we are live on Wednesday, the 18th of May. It's 1 o'clock. It's the midweek show, which means it's just me, right? If you've ever listened to any of these before, you might have caught one where I've got a guest on and we're putting the world to rights. Maybe you've heard me interviewing academics or Super Tansky and Davey Moo. These midweek shows, the Wednesday ones, are just me trying to make sense of the senseless. So here we go again, yo. Special hello first and foremost, by the way, to the Patreon backers, Kerry, Paul, and now James, who popped onto the Buy Me a Coffee link yesterday. Honestly, the sight of you all supporting the show and helping it grow makes my pants pregnant. So thank you. This episode is brought to you in association with zero sponsors, but perhaps you can help with that. If you listen to a few of these and you don't want to jump onto the Patreon for whatever reason, I totally get it. For first look episodes and bonus content, that is fine. It's a weird time. We're all a bit strapped at the moment, I think. All I would ask is that maybe if you have enjoyed a couple of episodes, 2 or 3, maybe share an episode that you enjoyed with a friend who you think might also enjoy it. That's it. That's the pitch. I've laid out my stall for you now. Let's crack on. So I've done a bunch of episodes on UK politics recently, and we've not really touched on the US for a bit. And I did a few solo ones on the US before on gun control and weird stories that materialize in the UK press, which I suppose is a bit of a warped way to look at the US. Because if a story makes it to the UK, it's going to have a slightly weird angle to it, you know? Like, we all know that you love your guns. We get it. You know? Like, when someone's granddad gets shot over who finished the last bottle of Mountain Dew, it is a shock to zero British people. It doesn't even register. Like, I'm sorry your granddad's dead, but, like, come on. You know, like, over here, we've got our own real problems to worry about. We've got creeping authoritarianism. We've got privatized NHS. We've got criminalized protest. We don't have the fucking bandwidth to listen to every Iowa, Delaware, Illinois, Michigan fucking suburb where some opioid-addicted 7-Eleven employee had a gloomy Monday and shot his uncle for the money in the cookie jar. Like, that is every day for you. Just like we wouldn't expect Fox News to run a segment on the rain in Britain or how bad British teeth are, you know? Like, does everyone in the United States care how bad British teeth are? No, because it's an everyday thing. And you've tried telling us to look into it, and we told you to fuck off. And it is the same thing with guns and much of the US news, you know? So Fox News couldn't give two shits about our problems if they grew another arsehole on top of Tucker Carlson. So it's rare that everyday US news stories make the news here, unless there's something weird to them. That's my point, really. And so, I don't know, nothing had really kind of crept into my periphery in recent years, in recent times, recent weeks. But I thought, like, for this episode, I'd go combing again. I'd go and look for something that might, pique your interest. Some sort of contrast between UK and US, if not for any other reason other than to, make us here in the UK feel a little bit better about ourselves, because everything seems kind of fucked here. So I don't know, sometimes it's nice to look over the fence and go like, well, at least it's not that bad. So I thought I'd go combing, and my girlfriend has, she's just been to LA and Las Vegas for a week, which is cool. I've been at home with the kids, which is inarguably less cool. But one of the things that she was struck by while she was there, and by proxy that I was then struck by from her sort of telling me about it and, showing me it, and was the homeless problem. Like, the sheer number of homeless people. Like, I'm told it's insane out there. And it's not just her sort of, retailing this back to me and me just taking it hook, line and sinker. Like, it is, I've heard this from multiple sources. I've read this in multiple news outlets. It is understood to be a horrible issue in Los Angeles and in wider California also. And whilst she was there, she sent me some videos, which I know it's a bit uncouth, but I get it. You know, I understand the compulsion to do it. Like if I'm in Leicester Square in London and there's a homeless guy grabbing a half-eaten Burger King from a bin, and I'm stood there filming, that is like, no, you know, come on, that's not cool. But if I'm in a different country and the homeless problem is so outrageously out of control and I'm a fish out of water, you know, documenting it, then yeah, like show your husband or your wife back home, like, yeah, look at this place. This place is fucked. Because then you're reporting it then, you know, this is my story for today, for you, you know. And she sent this thing to me like I wouldn't believe it, you know? Like, you won't believe this shit that I'm seeing, right? Like, this was the sights in Los Angeles as far as she was concerned. This was what she was sending me. Like, this is Hollywood, look. And it wasn't fucking, you know, Tara Reid stumbling into a nail salon. Just a guy out of his mind, staring up at the sky, doing God knows what. You know, it's like, check out LA. This is Los Angeles, you know? And it's, look, I'm here for it, you know? Like, I've always been attracted to the muck of society. Her reporting the muck of society, it's always been, that's been my thing, is the muck of life. You know, it's one of the reasons we found love in each other, I guess. But, but I guess, you know, like, I've always liked the mucky punk rock elements to, like, you know, like mucky punk rock comedy nights and recordings, like grainy recordings of gigs and stand-up bootlegs where you can hear the bottles clink from behind the bar and you can hear real people laughing. You know, it's not canned laughter. It's like a real late night bar crowd laughing all over the punchlines. Like, there's just something really beautifully grungy and raw about music or comedy, you know, when it's done like that. So I don't know, I've always been drawn to the muck of things. And so there's a part of me that kind of likes having the cellophane taken off of Hollywood like this. Pick that scab. Let's see what's running underneath, you know? But it was a bit jarring hearing about, you know, tent cities and homeless guys with no teeth and people taking half-eaten shit food out of bins to eat where it was like already inedible American food before it got in the fucking bin, you know? Like, it's just like, I'm going to eat this chicken burger that was washed in chlorine and injected with hormones and marinated in MSG and sugar and probably some other chemicals that are only legal because the CEO donated to the senator to cut the red tape. This chicken burger is poison, all right? You know? Some guy's like, well, as long as you didn't get it out of the bin, you know, just blow on it. It'll be all right, you know. But my girlfriend was really weirded out by it because it's such a contrast from what you expect of the bright lights and glitz of LA, right? Like, how fucked is LA when this is what foreigners are WhatsApping back to people back home, you know? Like Los Angeles, you've got movie studios and shooting locations and movie stars and the beach and tours. But the takeaway, the headline is, Christ, this place is a shithole, you know? Like that's the underlying point they're left with to share. And it's quite the juxtaposition, right? Because you think Hollywood, you think stars on the streets, celebrities, scenes from Pretty Woman, right? And then you spool forward to the modern day and it's just some shirtless 53-year-old wandering around like, I got oxy if you want to party, you know? It's like, and I'm not mocking the homeless, don't get it twisted. Like, I'm more bewildered by how the fuck does it get that bad, you know? To see these videos, to hear about these tent cities, to look at the numbers of people, the dispossessed. It's like, how has it got this bad? Like I have friends who live in LA and they're like, how the fuck is it not just this bad, but it's gotten worse year on year. as in it was already jarringly bad a couple of years ago. You know, like Joe Rogan, I think, ranted about it before he moved to Texas. And that was what, like 3 years ago or something? Maybe 4? And mates of mine from England went to go and visit my mates who live in LA. And this is like 2 or 3 years ago. And it was bad then. Like so bad, like strikingly bad 2 or 3 years ago. And since then, the numbers have only increased. Like it's gone up another 12% in the last year. And my mates who live there come on WhatsApp, you know, chat groups, and they say stuff to us. They're like, we don't get it. You know, we pay super high taxes in California. It's got movie studios. It's got this. It's got that. It's got tech money coming in. It's got the economy. You know, so I don't know why it's so bad. Like, where the fuck does the money go? You know, it's perplexing. But I guess it's like it is here to some extent. You know, you get a local government, which is, you know, in that instance is California. Over here, it would just be, you know, domestic UK government, or, you know, the England and Wales legislation, and like political leaders. Like some guy in a nice suit will get elected because he says some shit like, I'm as tired of this shit as you are, and I'm as tired of it all as it is necessary for me to say for you to vote for me so I can do the bidding of corporations who are paying for this advert. Vote for me, please, because they'll buy me a beach house. You know, like it's so corrupt. And then when they get in office, then they spend most of their time batting back reforms that would actually help people, or defensively arguing in media broadcast suites. That they waste so much of their time and their political capital. And then when they do actually get to like a situation where they have to affect change, or they have to do something, and they're pushed into a corner where they have to contract it out to somebody that's gonna fix the problem, then they contract it to some outsourcing corporation that's hooked on public money and jack up the price of everything so nothing ever gets done. You know, like over here it would be Group 4 Securicor or like Serco, or, you know, and they do an objectively shit job. But by the time anyone realizes that they've failed to meet any of their milestones that they were set, then it's election time again. And then we're back to talking about socialism and immigrants, you know, or whatever. It's just, it all fades into the background of the ever-changing news cycle, you know? I mean, I don't know dick one about Californian state politics. I know absolutely zero about that, but I am positive that is 100% accurate based on my no knowledge whatsoever. Where's my Sophie Corcoran award? However you pronounce her fucking name. Sophie Corcoran, is that right? Or Corcoran? In all honesty, I read a little bit about this the other day while she was sending me this footage and, you know, saying how weird it was and jarring to see how bad things had gotten. I read up a little bit about it, and I think a big thing is obviously the opioid crisis. And I think that's sort of in tandem, sort of perfect storm with the welfare system that they have or don't have, as the case may be. Like with the opioids, in the US, like we don't really have that in the same way here, do we? You know, Americans love their fucking painkillers, man. It must be really painful just being American. They have huge big pharma problems, huge big pharma influence, the big pharma lobby, you know, it's like doctors prescribing them left, right, and center. It's just fucking insane. Like, I think I'll start you off on a course of OxyContin. You're like, what the fuck? I said I had a cold, right? But these will take your mind off it. You're like, we're not even in the office. We're not even in your surgery. I was talking to the cashier in front of you in the supermarket, right? But I couldn't help it over here. It's my Hippocratic oath. I have to help you. So take this, give it to the pharmacy over there. It's a 2-for-1 deal before 9 tonight. You know. Like industrial drug pushing. Or at least that's what I'm led to believe it's like, you know? Maybe it's changed a little bit. Maybe they've brought in a bit more regulation now, but from the looks of the homeless problem, it doesn't fucking look like it. And it's all these, it's not like just OxyContin. It's not just like one big pharma producer that's just producing one problematic product on which a lot of people are getting addicted. It's all these weird pick and mix types of painkillers, OxyContin, Percocet, morphine, Damarol, Propofol, Tramadol, Valium, like you fucking fill in the blank. Prescription drugs in the US is just an insane problem. I think anyone who's had any experience with drugs in the UK hears about that stuff in the US, and we're like what? Like why don't you just take ecstasy? Like why are you fucking around with industrial, like green ticked heroin, basically? Like with ecstasy, it's fun. You feel loved up and you dance, and added bonus, people rarely end up on the street sucking a dick to fund their ecstasy addiction. It's not really a thing, like I'm not advocating that you should go out and spaff a lifetime supply of endorphins in your brain, blowing out your synapses and ending up a depressed as fuck 41-year-old. But I'm just saying, if you are going to get high, if you know yourself, and you like to get twisted and knocked out occasionally, you like to get a bit recco, I'm just saying maybe choose the pick and mix aisle that has the one where you don't end up sucking off a city worker in a tent so he won't brush away your tent kind of thing, Like I'd take a gloomy Monday over that shit any fucking day. Here's a random thought. Is this why Americans don't drink like Brits? Because we drink in Britain and Ireland, right? Is this why Coachella won't let you take alcohol into the bands, like the arena performance stage area? Because you just fucking suck at getting wrecked. Americans suck at getting hammered. Brits are like, yeah, I'll take 2 bottles of vodka and a bomb of Mandy and boom, back in the office Monday morning, no problem. Americans fuck around like, hold this while I overdose on Nurofen. Like... You just suck at doing drugs and booze, The opioid thing is crazy, though. The opioid epidemic in the US. In fact, I did an episode just on like fentanyl a couple of months ago about these 2 American teenagers who overdosed on fentanyl, which, if you don't know, it's a sort of synthetic heroin substitute thing, but it's something insane, like 90 times stronger than heroin. So you're so much more likely to overdose on it, especially if you don't think it's fentanyl. If you think you bought heroin or morphine or something and it's cut with fentanyl because fentanyl's cheaper or whatever, you're just more likely to overdose on it. And this episode I did, which you could go back and find it on Funk 27, which is where I keep all the 8 podcast episodes and blogs and everything. It's sort of examining how weird it is to look back on the moral panic about kids smoking now. Like, do you remember back in the 80s and the 90s, there was a huge thing about kids smoking or kids who sniffed glue. Oh my God. Like that was the big thing. And like what a fantasy utopia that seems now. To only have children who did that is just, like, Jan, I caught Robbie sniffing a Pritt stick. Like, Jan clutches her pearls. We tried so hard to protect him from these demons. Take him out of school over it. Send him away to live with his aunt somewhere else. To get him off these hard drugs. When my mum first accused my brother of having been smoking, it was like the biggest thing ever. It needed like EastEnders drums after it. It was that big. She'd be like, Adam, Adrian, it used to. Adam, I've been told you've been smoking. Dun, 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 dun. Like huge drama on our council estate that night. More so. But like little did my generation know, but a 14-year-old taking a drag off a paper roll of toxic tar and benzene. Little did we know at that time That was the good old days. We didn't know it then. Children coating their lungs in tobacco smoke and tar was a golden period of child safety, apparently, looking back on it now. Certainly in America, it seems. But now we spool forward and, now it's like kids are taking heroin now, it's like fucking barely makes the news. Not so much like a moral panic now as a moral. No. Oh, right. Okay. That's happened. Like, are you panicked? No. It's like the opioid crisis is killing children now. Oh, okay. It's like the same reaction we would give to a news story about a reconfigured one-way system. Like you see, they rerouted Queen Street so it diverts into the trading estate now. Oh, right. Okay. It's the exact same reaction, like kind of underwhelmed, pretend to be impressed or, But anyway, back to the homeless thing. It's just that, though, isn't it? It's like the opioid stuff is just like they haven't got a grip on it. When it first came about, it was like, people with back problems, people with leg problems being prescribed things and not being able to get on it. And because they didn't wrap a tourniquet around it at that point, it's just bled out into more and more facets of American society. And now I think that whole problem has touched, school life and academia, absolutely. And it's touched rock stars like Tom Petty and Prince and Michael Jackson most famously, right? But unsurprisingly, it's now touched the most desperate in the LA homeless scene as well. Will it touch LA comedy? We can only hope. But why is it so bad? Is what I keep coming back to, And I mean, like, there's this opioid culture, but also I guess with America, it's because they don't have universal credit, right? Which we lampoon over here and we rightly appraise it. We all say it's shit and it's not enough. And we all say there's not enough council houses and so on. And all of that is true. But at least there is still, for now, at least a system, a safety net in some capacity that will find somewhere for you. Like if you get desperate, if you lose your job, if you have no income, there is that for the most part. Like, I'm sure they fuck up and I'm sure they're stretched to fuck, but even if it's a shit rotting disused army barracks or a 1-star bed and breakfast somewhere, I say somewhere, it's probably in Slough. But the system is there for now, at least. But in America, I get the feeling that if you're living paycheck to paycheck, and that money disappears, you get fired from the company or the company winds up. You can't find another job quickly enough. And you crawl to local government or your bank and you say, I can't afford my mortgage this month. I think your options are limited. If your parents aren't around to take you back in or they hate you, or you've moved there to be a comedian and you're just patently not funny, which is, sounds brutal, but that's the reality for a lot of people. And everything grinds to a halt, your income disappears, then God forbid you do end up on the street. Your life is awful. Instantly, you've got people stealing what's in your tent, mentally ill people punching you in the fucking face, threatening you. Maybe then you've fallen through the cracks, there's no welfare. Even if you weren't on substances like in the real world, as it were, I could totally see how you... Like a lot of people would then start taking shit, start medicating their way through an awful situation. So it's a mix of the opioid crisis and the lack of a decent welfare system to catch you through falling through the cracks. God, I can't talk today, guys. It's a mix of the two, the perfect storm. Unregulated opioid prescription and lack of welfare. And then, look, just to be fair, there's clearly others who get into hard drugs in their everyday life. Gateway users, people who started on weed and then overnight moved on to meth. I'm sure that happens. I'm sure that happens every day, every hour. And their drug use spirals and they end up on the street because of it. But, either way, lots of drugs involved in LA homelessness, I feel. And so that's the why, I guess. And then we get to but why is it that bad, Because it's kind of felt like how bad it's gotten. Like, not that it is bad, but that it hasn't settled. Do you know what I mean? Like when we talk about recessions or when we talk about inflation is hot topic at the moment, but you know, there's usually a plateau, or there's usually a sort of peak of something, right? Where the horrible descent then starts to settle, but it doesn't seem to be settling over there. Hasn't reached its peak yet. It's still worsening. Okay, like here's a question for you, which I will inevitably answer myself, I suppose, given the nature of these solo shows. But why do you think it is unfixable? Why do you think it's getting worse? Like 12% increase in homelessness in 1 year in Los Angeles. That's wild, man. That's like, I don't know what the figures are like for London. Maybe they're that bad here. But I'm led to believe it's the same in San Francisco, another great Californian city. And I don't know, like for a state that was already struggling with it so bad that people like Joe Rogan were like, oh, fuck this, you know? Like, how is it descending further and further into this weird tale of two cities dystopia, you know? Tech billionaires on one street corner and then people fucking beating each other to death for their opioids on another. Like, how is it getting so weird and divided and worse and worse? I think it's a topic that's kind of, it's a bit sensitive to discuss sometimes, right? Because people get demonized incorrectly, in my opinion, for showing concerns about safety and how to protect themselves or their families, right, from some of the risks that being constantly bombarded with mentally ill drug addicts might present to you and your children, you know? People get demonized for that shit. Like, it's okay to be concerned, I think. And it's not always as simple as, like, well, open your hearts and your homes to these people. Like, no. A lot of the time, these people need professionally trained, protected people to help treat and rehabilitate them. And it kind of needs people like me or like people like you to kind of call it out, you know? Like, what the fuck? Like, what are you doing about these homeless people, you know? Because I sort of, you know, I put myself in the position of people who live over there right now, right? People who have jobs, people who rent or they've got mortgages and they just live a normal life in Los Angeles right now. I put myself in their position. Like if I were living in LA now with my family and I'm, you know, my walk to work or my walk back from the school with my kids or, you know, my walk taking the missus out for dinner. If all of these boring 41-year-old guy things were kind of like marred by me getting bothered constantly by very desperate opioid addicted souls, like badgering me for money or being antisocial to my kids or threatening my wife or like breaking into my car. And none of these things are far-fetched, by the way. Like these things happen as a result of this sort of spiraling homelessness. I think in response to that environment with my kids and our safety, I think I would be going, yeah, I'm gone. Bye. You know, I don't think that's an evil sensibility to adopt or to have. I don't think that makes you a bad person. And I actually think it kind of makes you a good person to then call it out, to put your hand up and go like, whoa, what the fuck is going on? How are you going to fix this? You know, it doesn't make you callous or unfeeling to want to find a solution for this fucking, you know, small town's population of homeless people. We need to step back from demonizing people for being like that, you know, for seeking a solution. For you know, I don't know what the go-to tag is that you would wrap around people who hold up their hands and raise that as an issue, like heartless, brutal, normal. Because I think it is like, it's a normal reaction. You take 70,000 homeless people with nothing to lose and line them up and pick one, and on the wrong day, at the wrong time, in the wrong set of circumstances, I'm sure you could find one that would kill you for your phone. And I don't think that's outrageous to say that. You know, and I'm not blaming them for it. I'm not saying, oh, you know, it's bloody like ne'er-do-wells. Like, I'm not blaming them for it. I think that's the key thing. If they're poor and desperate and addicted to whatever substances, they got a fried out brain and no shot at changing their situation and nobody to pick them up and help them, the rules of society start to no longer apply to them because mostly, like, because society has kind of removed them from itself. So society isn't offering them a whole lot, right? So I think it's quite reasonable to kind of go, well, fuck this, pack up my family, move somewhere safer, because the people that they elect over there to fix this kind of problem appear to have manifestly failed. So your second option, the least worst option, is to kind of go, I have to go. I can't be around this lack of safety. And the other thing I think I touched on earlier was the lack of the safety net, right? The welfare thing. I just want to come back to that for a second. Like, I forget who it was that told me this quote. And if I can't remember who told it to me, then there is zero chance I can remember who it's originally attributed to. So we can throw that out of the fucking window straight away. You can Google it if you care. But it was something along the lines of every American is just a temporarily embarrassed millionaire. Just like let that sink in for a minute, because it's perfect for explaining the issue with LA homelessness. And I think to some extent with people's appetite to fix it, you know, with raising taxes to fix it. I think it sort of encapsulates or personifies American attitudes to welfare more broadly, maybe. Every American is just a temporarily embarrassed millionaire. Because it's like, you could pay more tax and you could fix this. You could pay more tax. I mean, this goes for anything, right? You could have services that support everyone, give everyone a better quality of life, make things safer for everyone, clean buses, walk-in health centers, free dental, libraries, drug rehabilitation, domestic violence shelters. But it will mean that everyone pays in a bit. So yeah, higher taxes. But the quote, like, every American is just a temporarily embarrassed millionaire, it kind of speaks to the idea that Americans do want these things, but they honestly feel like, I better not vote for it now, because next week I'll be a CEO and I don't want to lose half my $1 billion salary to higher taxes, you know? Every American's just a temporarily embarrassed millionaire, because they think they're going to be rich next week. So don't vote for the thing that's going to increase taxes this week, because then, you might lose your millions next. And I wonder if there's an element of that to this, right? Like, how much would it cost? How much would it really cost? Ballpark figure to house and treat these homeless people. How much do you think? Because I've read a few figures. Like, they go from 50,000 to 100,000 in terms of like the population of people dispossessed in LA. So I don't know. Let's go midway, right? 70,000 people. I have no idea if that's accurate. But let's say you need 70,000 rooms for people somehow, somewhere. Maybe you could reduce that a bit and some people could share. But I guess ultimately you're looking at disused prisons, old mental hospitals, the equivalent of, I don't know what the American equivalent of army barracks is. Government could rent out some hotels. I guess you'd need like task forces as well to grade people, right? In terms of their mental health issues. Like, over here, this woman seems timid, sober and vulnerable. So we put her in a low risk facility where she's not going to be attacked. She's sober. She's not going to attack anyone. But this guy over here couldn't make it through a 10-minute assessment without trying to murder someone. So padded cell for this guy, like you'd need a task force to grade all these people. And then what? Like, then you got them all in facilities. Then you have to get them off drugs. You got to upskill them so they can do something and stay off the street. You got to give them goals and a mental toolkit, a way of earning some money, self-sustaining, train them, teach them, feed them. Let's say half of them are rehabilitatable, if that's a word. Let's say you can rehabilitate half of them. So that's 35,000 are going to need, say, a finger in the air, total, just pulling figures out my arse. 35,000 of them are going to need $30,000 a year. For 3 years to manage, like to train them, to feed them, to have them constantly assessed and, to give them methadone or whatever it is that we need to give them to get them off the hard stuff. So $30,000 a year for 35,000 people is $1 billion a year. So $3 billion for that program. And that's just me pulling fingers? Pulling fingers out my arse. It's not that kind of podcast, guys. That's just me pulling figures out of my arse in terms of how much I could imagine this costing. $3 billion for a 3-year program to get half of the people who we think are rehabilitatable off the streets and trained and, you know, get them jobs or, you know, $3 billion. I don't know, man. I'm not a politician. I know nothing about homelessness, really, and I'm awful at maths. But we live in a world where Brexit is routinely celebrated, and, you know, the UK's oil and gas-fueled inflation problem is apparently caused by work from home. So we live in a fantasy land. Let's just accept that now. So if the worst that happens on this podcast is I get a sum wrong, or my, I don't know, frankly admirable task of trying to fix homelessness ends up missing something or overlooking something, you know, little oversight, I'm at peace with that. But let's just assume for a minute it is $3 billion. It sounds like a lot, right? But then in terms of government money, is it? Is $3 billion that much? What do you think? Like, I mean, in terms of, like, money that we've bunged in this country, I know we're talking pounds over here, and it's dollars over in the States, and there is a currency change thing, but, you know, since Brexit, that's settled to some extent. But, you know, we've just written off £11 billion over here, which is probably about $13 billion. That was on COVID fraud. We just wrote that off like it didn't matter. So between all the companies based in LA and, you know, Sacramento and Santa Monica and, you know, San Fran, couldn't they all kind of pitch in? Couldn't they all find 100 million each from their balance sheets or their CEOs and just go like, you know, look, let's fix this between us. You know, it doesn't have to be higher taxes. If we don't want to raise taxes, fine. But between us, between all the movie studios and Tesla and Facebook, couldn't they all find $70 million each and just throw it in the kitty so that fewer of their employees get murdered walking to their fucking cars in the morning? You'd think that'd be near the top of the Apple employee benefits, wouldn't you? Like, we run a cycle to work scheme, and you can get 20% off when you visit the Apple store. And, like, could you maybe help fix homelessness so I don't get murdered? No, well, yeah, we want you to feel good about working here. Yeah, that's why we run the LGBTQ Rainbow Walk twice a year. Right, but about maybe contributing to wider society and making it safer for, like, could we maybe just no. We could rehabilitate 35,000 people in a year, sure, but, you know, how many of them would what, go back on the street, go back on drugs? No, how many rehabilitated homeless people are going to be able to afford iPhones, you know? I mean, you got to think about it. Right. I mean, there's no return on investment with that, Chad. You got to think it through, you know? It's kind of like that. It's that in a nutshell. Like, what would be in it for them? For Apple to actually consider the welfare and well-being of their employees and the environment that their employees live and work and commute and, you know, and rent in. No, it's just way easier to just, like, paint fucking some Sacramento pathway rainbow colors, you know? Like, how fucked is we're going way off beast here, but that's kind of the theme of this show, right? How fucked is Western society? It's so weird. Like, we live in a world where Apple and Google will do, like, rainbow diversity days and host, like, trans in tech seminars. Like, we want to make Apple the most comfortable places to work as possible. We want to make it a comfortable place of work while their Chinese factory workers work 18 hours and throw themselves off the fucking building because it's so awful. We want to make it a comfortable place for everyone to feel comfortable. 3,000 miles away, some guy's like, I can't fucking take it. Woo! Splat. It's so weird that... Anyway, listen, guys, I could rant about this all day, but this is always fun to do. this podcast, these solo ones, if you are in a position to support the podcast, I do have a Patreon. It is patreon.com/AidThompsin with an IN on the end. I know times are tough, which is why I've made the selfless, frankly, too good to be true decision to keep the podcast available to everyone for free. They're always on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and YouTube, but they do go on Patreon first. And then they sneak their way onto Spotify and the rest afterwards. All I ask is that if you're not jumping on Patreon or Buy Me a Coffee, I've got one of those as well. If you're not jumping on those and you are enjoying the shows, maybe send a link of a show that you enjoyed to a friend. Spread the word. That would be really, really great. Or spread the link of a show that you fucking hated to an enemy. And, share me around like the cheap, charmless harlot that I am. Special thanks once again to Kerry and Paul, the show's first two Patreons, and indeed to James, who went to my Buy Me a Coffee yesterday to buy me a beer. Thank you very, very much, sir. All the previous episodes, as I mentioned earlier, are up at funk27.co.uk. There's a weekly gallows humour, frankly, #Bimfluencers blog, mocking the dystopian fucking nightmare that we're now all living in. I'll be back Friday night with a guest that comes from a different political place to me. I think he'd balk at being described as a lefty, so he's comfortably not in the left of the political spectrum. I'd playfully speculate, he can correct me on this, I would speculate he sits in a sort of centre-right kind of place. So it's going to be interesting getting his thoughts on, things like work from home, to creeping authoritarianism, to Team Johnson's response to the 100 fines in Partygate, and so on. Anyway, that's Friday night, live stream at 7:30 on YouTube before it vanishes without a trace and goes on Patreon. Until then, guys, this has been a lot.